started. Thanks for being here. It's Inspire Me seminar on Fridays, noon, hopefully every week here. I'm going to pass around an attendance sheet. I'm going to say that first. So make sure you got your name on here. Make sure you record that you were attending and present. So I don't know where, if you've already signed it, go ahead and pass it on. If not, we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so today we have a very special guest. He's going to talk about engineering licensure. Today we have Keith Simila, and he is a professional engineer, and he's also the executive director of the Idaho Board of Professional Engineers and Professional Land Surveyors. So he's here to talk about licensure, professionalism, and that sort of thing. So something near and dear to the hearts of all of us as engineers, and so we can practice engineering in the workplace in our field. So Keith got a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. So I don't know, do we have any civil engineers in the audience? One? Okay. Two? A couple people? Nice. Thanks for coming. From Oregon State back in 1980. I don't really maybe I shouldn't mention the years. Master of Arts in Business Administration and Management from Regent University, and then he's also been the Director of Engineering at the U.S. Forest Service, so that's over a period of years. Had some wide-ranging experience there, so quite a career so far. And again, coming to us from the State Board, and so please welcome Keith. I think he's going to give us a few comments.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. What I want to try to do is make this presentation interactive, so we can talk together, and if you have questions, feel free to ask those questions. I've got kind of a standard presentation I do. There's two segments to this. There's one segment just focused on licensure itself. There's another segment, if we have the time, we'll talk a little bit about ethics, the kind of things that get engineers in trouble as they practice. And if you get letters from the licensing board, it's generally not a good thing, just because maybe there's something that's gone wrong. And there's a lot of good reasons to think about ethics and how we practice as engineers. So let me just start out. As was mentioned, our office is out in Meridian. I work for the State Licensing Board, and the licensing board is comprised of 7 members appointed by the governor, and 6 of which are either engineers or land surveyors. We have a public member on the board as well. And the board's job is to issue licenses to professional engineers, review applications, that kind of thing, and to discipline engineers and land surveyors when they either misbehave or practice incompetently. So that's kind of the focus of the job. My job is to run the office and to make sure that people get their exams and get their paperwork all completed and that kind of thing, as well as come in here and talk to you all about what it takes to get a license, why we should get licensed, and those kinds of things. So they're going to try to set me up with a clicker while I'm talking, so I'm just going to talk with the mouse here. So many of you, you're all going to hopefully graduate from Boise State University, right? We're all here to graduate, and all of you are going to get jobs, and you're going to work as engineers, and that's your goal. But what you don't know is how many of you have jobs lined up already for when you graduate? Anybody have jobs lined up? A couple of you? So what we don't know oftentimes when we go to school is where we're going to work, how long we're going to work there, and what we're going to be doing. Maybe we'll decide on a career shift and that kind of thing. And I know these days people move around from different jobs, different employers on a fairly regular basis, right? I mean, that's kind of the norm anymore. So a lot of times it's hard to know where you're going to be, what you're going to need from a credential standpoint into the future. So what do you think employers are looking for when they want to hire an engineer? What are they looking for? They're going to come here to Boise State. Maybe you're going to do some interviews with employers. Maybe some of you have already done interviews. What are they looking for? Yeah.
Experience.
For what?
Experience.
I'm sorry.
Experience.
Experience. Okay. What else are they looking for?
Practical knowledge.
Practical knowledge. That's a good thing. Anything else? What else are credential, well, the first credential they're going to want to know is, are you going to graduate? You're going to get your education credential, right? Your Bachelor of Science in Engineering is probably one of the most important credentials you're going to get in order for you to get hired and work with an employer as an engineer. But there are other credentials that engineers get. You can get certifications in different specialty areas. And you can get a license, which is also what's known as a credential. And in many cases, employers are looking for you to have what we call an engineer intern credential, which is what you can get when you take the first of 2 licensure exams. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And there is a credential that's universally recognized, and it's called the Professional Engineering Credential. So why do we license people? Why do we license doctors and lawyers and accountants and engineers? What's the purpose of a license? Do we know?
So we don't get crappy professionals on the field.
Don't want crappy professionals. Okay? What else would we license people?
Hold people accountable.
Hold people accountable.
Protect the public.
Protect the public. Do you want just anybody designing a bridge? I mean, why wouldn't we want that? People can call themselves experts and stuff, but how do they demonstrate that level of minimum competence or a level of expertise? We license people as doctors and lawyers and accountants, as engineers, because there is an element of the public has an expectation that the work that gets done by you as an engineer is done to a certain level of competency, a certain standard, and that they can expect that you're going to be an ethical practitioner, that you're not going to defraud people, you're not going to do things that would cause your client or the public to be ripped off or stolen from or whatever. So those are the kind of reasons why we have a license.
As an employer looking at a resume on a table that has, if she's got 2 candidates side by side and one's got a license and one doesn't, the employer automatically knows that the person with the PE has already met a minimum standard of education, experience, and qualifications set by his peers. It takes away one unknown for him.
If I were interviewing a candidate for a job and they had their PE license, it would tell me 2 things. It would tell me that they are technically solid, and it would tell me that they are willing to put forth the extra effort in whatever job they're doing, be it their license or any other job they may do for me.
Well, the biggest thing that motivated me was, to me, it's the overall, it's almost the finish line. It's the ultimate goal to me in engineering is to become a professional engineer. And it's something that I always kept in the back of my mind, kept me very driven on those levels, because it's like stopping short if I didn't get there. And it's something that also, it provides a great deal of flexibility in your career as you go on, whether it's not with the same company or somewhere different. If I didn't take it, if I didn't pursue it, I think it really did limit me as a person.
What I would tell someone that wasn't sure whether they would need their PE or not is that, like I say, you never know what you are going to do.
It's 2 little letters, but it just opens the door for you to do so much more.
It can only help your career. It'll open doors for you. It'll make you a lot more marketable than someone who doesn't have a PE.
Okay, so professional engineer, the license, it tells the public that you have met the standard in order to get the credential. So we talked a little bit about who oversees licensure, and I talked about our licensure board, so I won't go into that too much more. But and the requirements do differ by state. But I can tell you, those of you who graduated from Boise State, you're probably not, if you get a license in Idaho, you're probably not going to have trouble getting a license in any state. And the primary reason for that is the exams are national exams. And so the education credential you're going to get here at Boise State is accredited by the Engineering Accrediting Commission of ABET. And so based on the accreditation of this university and based on the fact that these are national exams, you shouldn't have trouble getting a license in any state. So if you start in Idaho and down the licensure path, you can complete it just about any time. So So in Idaho, the requirements for licensure are basically what we call a three-legged stool. You got to have an education credential, you got to have an experience credential, and that experience is at least 4 years in almost every state. Some states it's a little different, but in Idaho it's going to be 4 years. And that experience can't just be any experience. It has to be bona fide engineering experience, and it has to be what they call progressive. You can't be doing the same job for 4 years and expect that the board's going to say, hey, that's you're ready to be a licensed professional engineer. You've got to show that you've progressed in terms of level of responsibility, level of complexity, and that kind of thing as part of your experience level. And then you're going to have some references, and usually in our state anyway, we require a minimum of 3 PEs as references. They don't necessarily need to be your supervisors. They can be your peers. They can be people you work with that know or have some knowledge of your engineering capabilities. And then in Idaho, we have applications online at our website that you can get in order to apply for the PE. And the FD will talk about it in a minute how that works. But there's an organization that deals with all of the exams and deals with things like keeping track of your records, your transcripts, and that kind of thing. It's called the National Council of Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors, otherwise known as NCEES. And that is the organization you'll go to sign up for the exams. And there's a cost to that, of course, for FD exams. So one of the things that a PE does for you is it enables you to do things you can't do if you don't have a PE. But if you don't have a PE credential, you can't own your own engineering firm. Call yourself an engineer. You can't consult and advertise yourself as a consultant. You can't sign and seal design work products with a seal. You can't bid on public projects, public money meaning public works type projects. You can't advertise your services as an engineer or as a professional engineer. We have both a title restriction and a practice restriction in the state law in Idaho, and most states do as well. And you can't call yourself a professional engineer if you don't have a credential. So there's some real advantages of getting that credential. And I'll say just right at the get-go that not everybody gets a license. And the primary reason for that is that there's this provision of law in almost every state called an industrial exemption. And what that means is that if you're working for a company and the product that company produces does not really doesn't have a nexus in the public health, safety, and welfare. Let's say I have a brother-in-law that works at Hewlett-Packard out here in Boise, and he designs printers. Well, if a printer fails, the public isn't going to be injured by that, right? The public isn't going to be harmed because printers fail. And so he doesn't have to have a license, and he's never been licensed. And so if you're working for an organization like that, you don't have to have a license. But if you're working for a company that, say, designs heating, ventilating, and air conditioning equipment, or does design and installs that in buildings, as a mechanical engineer might, or a pumping station of some kind that deals with public water infrastructure, and you're a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer or any kind of engineer doing that kind of work, you're going to need a license because there is a nexus to public health, safety, and welfare that requires a license. And the thing about it is you don't know who you're going to work for or the kind of projects you're going to work on when you're in school and when you get out of school. So there's an advantage in trying to follow down the path of a professional licensure credential, whether you're working in an exempt industry or whether you're not. So there are benefits. We talked about career doors being open. You do have an ability to distinguish yourself. You do get the advantage of belonging to a licensed profession that maybe some of your unlicensed peers wouldn't. And there is a higher level of expectation in terms of your ethical performance, being able to perform for the public. And believe it or not, you typically earn more if you got your license than if you don't. Especially if you're working for a government organization. I know there's a number of employers in the Boise area that simply tie their promotions to this credential. Yes?
What about designers? When you talk about serving the public, I mean, I know several not licensed degreed engineers who own their own design firms and design
I don't know. You know, the circumstance is unique. We call that unlicensed practice, or it could be aiding and abetting an unlicensed person. There's laws against that. But bottom line is that, yes, if you're designing something, you need that PE credential in order to sign and seal it. Somebody's going to have to sign and seal the design. If you're going to submit a project, say, to a building department for review, the Boise Planning and Zoning or whatever, they're going to be looking for a PE stamp on those drawings before they're going to allow that building to even be constructed. So somebody, if they're designing something, needs to have PE credential. Now, let's say they're designing pumps, and you're just specking a pump out, and maybe they work for a company that designs pumps. Well, those designers may not necessarily need a PE credential. But on the other hand, there's case law that is developed that says that the PE that signs and certifies different design work and incorporate pumps and other kinds of equipment into that project, they have to also be responsible for what that pump design does, basically. And so the result is that as the courts have determined that more PEs are going to be required, even doing design work, even for products, if they're going to be incorporated into, say, a public works type projects and that kind of thing. So while they might be not needing a PE for that specific purpose, eventually I think it's going to come down to that.
To be a professional engineer means that you are held to a higher standard than somebody who's not licensed.
I think professional means that you are you're looking out for the public, you're looking out for the public's best interest, you're conscientious, you want to be as thorough as possible, and you want to do what's right.
One of the best ways to describe the process for getting your PE and why you need it is the same thing as a doctor and a lawyer. I mean, there's, I don't think engineers think of themselves in that same caliber a lot of times, and I don't know that we shouldn't. You know, we're building and designing the things that folks walk on and live in and drive on.
To me, a professional engineer is, when I hear that name anyway, that means that they have at least taken the technical competency and they've demonstrated that they're technically competent to somebody and that they have experience in their industry. It's very important. It means they take responsibility for their actions. They are competent in what they're doing.
I think besides the technical aspect, there's a certain level of accountability. I think with every professional licensure, there is the technical aspect, and then there's a whole side of ethics that that licensure makes you have. I mean, you would have to go out and be ethical in your dealings, ethical in your procedure of work, to be able to retain that.
Okay, so let's talk about the steps. We already talked about the need to get a degree, and you're on the path to do that here at Boise State. And it's already accredited, so that's a no-brainer for you. We talked about the experience, 4 years progressive. Okay, the third stool is the examination part. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here. There's 2 exams, one called fundamentals exam that you should take either your senior year or shortly after you graduate. And the second one is professional engineering exam, which in Idaho you need to take 4 years after you graduate, although we're in the process of changing the law to where you can take it any time after your FE exam. But we haven't got that law changed here, probably won't for a few years. So the FE exam. So what do they test on the FE exam? Well, they basically test what you're learning at the university level. Mostly your first 3 years, sometimes part of your 4th year, but mostly your first 3 years of college. Okay, and I didn't change this presentation. It's offered year-round. You can take it any day of the year that the Pearson VUE Test Center is open. And we'll talk about that in a minute. There's the exams. There's the places you can take it. The Pearson VUE Test Center in Boise is over off of Overland Road, and it's a citywide test center. The one up in Moscow is on the campus at U of I, and likewise at Pocatello, and there's one at BYU, Idaho. And then other major, almost every major town, and the Pearson View test centers are all over the world. So you can take the both, well, the FD exam for sure is going to be at the Pearson View testing center. So all you got to do is get online with NCES, pay your exam fee, reserve your seat at the Pearson View Test Center, and show up and take it. That's all you got to do. And if you don't show up, you forfeit your exam fee. So you don't want to do that. You can reschedule. There's a rescheduling fee. Believe it or not, we get some notions. Yes?
So, theoretical question, what if you show up and you don't do so good? Is there like a, like you can't take it again, or is there like a period where you have to wait?
Well, NCES has a waiting period, I think 3 months before they'll let you retake it. But you can take it as many times as you want. Idaho, we removed all the restrictions on how many times you can take it and when you can take it in our law just last year. So now you can take it. You don't want to have to be taking it more than once because of the cost of doing it. But if you want to take it more than once, it's up to you. We'd advise you to be well prepared to take it. Yes? Well, I think it's because Pearson View has a citywide center. I don't know why, and I've never asked Boise State why they haven't gotten their testing center established as a Pearson View center. But they could if they wanted to, but there's a cost to that, and they may want to pay the cost. Pearson View charges, it's not a free thing. So anyway, I know at U of I they had the testing center had to buy new monitors and do some other things to qualify for this particular exam. And that kind of thing. Any other questions? Okay, so here's the exam. This is what you can expect on the exam. They're discipline specific, so like if you're an ME, you want to sign up for the ME exam. If you're civil, you sign up for the civil exam. You want to make sure you sign up for the right exam. And these exams, NCES has references on their website. You can get like the references. They have practice exams, and handbooks. They have lots of tools to get you ready for this exam. So there really shouldn't be any reason why you shouldn't pass. I think the pass rate of Boise State students is like 93%. There's no reason why you shouldn't pass that exam. You're going to be really well prepared getting your education here at Boise State. And the national pass rate's like 70%. So you're going to do well. And the fact that you're in this class tells me you're probably well prepared to take this exam and pass it without a whole lot of difficulty. There's the types of questions that the exam specifications are on NCS's website. They do change from time to time. But these are the topics that you're going to be tested on as a mechanical engineer. There's separate specs for civils and a different spec for chemicals. And those are the numbers of questions on each, like this would be the number of questions you might expect on this particular topic on the exam. Now the way the exam is written, it's what they call a linear on-the-fly exam. It's a multiple choice exam, but two of you mechanical engineering students might go into the testing center, but be right next to each other, and you would have different test questions. Because every exam is created uniquely the way they do it now. So that's why they say the variable questions. They don't know how many of these questions you're going to get, but this is the range of the numbers of questions you might get. Because each exam is going to be uniquely generated just for you. And the exams are now offered year-round. They used to just have them in windows. I need to change the slide, but they're offered year-round. You can take them any month of the year. And they're basically just 6 hours, and within that 6 hours, there's the breakdown of how much time you have to take it. Tutorials, exams, breaks, non-disclosure agreement, those kind of things. So it's a pretty simple thing, 6 hour exam. And there are calculator restrictions. They don't talk about that here, but you need to pay attention to that. Get on NCS's website. They don't want you to bring just any calculator. You know, when I was in school, you used to have to manually integrate and differentiate, right? Nowadays, you just push a button on your calculator and it does all the calculus for you. Well, there are certain calculators they aren't going to let you bring in because the capability of calculators these days is a lot, it helps you solve the problems that you're really knowing the concepts. And so that's the purpose of that. And they do have what they call embedded references and that kind of thing. So you You're not going to be able to bring these books into the exam room. And I will say, they don't let you bring in cell phones and that kind of thing. There's a tutorial on NCS's website that talks about the person view center and when you show up, what you're going to do, what you can bring in, what you can't bring in, that kind of thing. And you don't want to try to violate the rules, right? I mean, you sign up, show up at the time you're supposed to show up. Don't bring stuff in you're not allowed to. Don't try to bring it because they're going to confiscate it from you. They're pretty rigorous about that. And if you do, like we had some people that, Google has glasses, smart watches. I got one of those. They don't let you bring these in. They don't let you bring Google glasses. And anything that communicates with the internet, you can't bring in, right? And so don't even try it, because if you do it and they find you later that you've got one of these devices, they're going to invalidate your entire results. You're going to forfeit your exam fee. You're going to get your name on a blacklist. So don't try to be sneaky about what you can or can't bring in if you can. It won't work in your favor. Okay. Anyway, there's a website that you can go to see what it's like to do at the First Review Test Center. They talk about the scratch pads and papers they'll give you and that kind of thing. And the results you'll get back in about 10 days. That's the nice thing about these computer grade tests. These are nationally normed exams, but you get your grades back in 10 days. You'll know whether you pass it or you pass it. And it's a pass-fail. They use a cut score. They're not going to necessarily get a grade. So if you fail it, you will get a diagnostic that shows you the types of questions that you failed in. That kind of thing. You get that directly from NCSS.
If I could go back and talk to myself, I would definitely recommend to take the Fundamentals of Engineering test while I was still in school. All the information is fresh. You remember it. You know it. You're using it every day for all of your classes.
Historically, if a candidate goes and pursues licensure earlier in their career, right after they get out of school, they do their FE exam, or even while they're in school, and 5 years down the line they do their professional engineering. If they pursue licensure earlier in their career, there's a much higher percentage of passing and people getting licensed. Even if you're going after a career path that doesn't require licensure, it's definitely a goal that you want to have, because if you decide 10 years down the line that you want to be licensed, it's that much harder, because now you got to relearn everything that you probably would have forgotten from in school. The key thing that if you talk to any professional engineer is, anybody will always say, hey, do it sooner rather than later, because the later you wait, the harder it's going to be, and you don't want to be having to go back year after year try and take the test, because it is difficult. Don't get me wrong, it's not something that it's easy, but that's what gives engineering and being a professional engineer, it's the distinction of being a professional engineer, that you do have to qualify for it, that you do have to pass a test that's set by your peers. So you're meeting a minimum standard that your peers have set for you, and that you're able to do that.
Okay, let's talk about the PE exam in a minute. Normally, like in Idaho, as soon as you pass that PE exam, you'll be given your license. There are a number of states, and Idaho's moving that direction too, that will allow you to take the PE exam earlier than 4 years. So, but you're still going to need to wait to get 4 years of experience before you can get a license in just about every state you have to apply. I know Nevada has no restriction on when you can take the PE exam, other than having passed the FE exam and having your degree. California lets you take it early, Utah lets you take it early, and that kind of thing. So we finally decided, just a month or so ago, our board has decided we're going to make the law changes and rule changes needed to allow people to take the PE exam early as well. And there's a reason for that I'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so we talked about what this exam is about. And it's right now it's a very similar exam to the FE, in that it's a paper and pencil multiple choice exam. That's going to start to change here shortly. They're moving the PE exam to a computer-based test. We're still about 3 or 4 years out from that happening. The first exams that are going to move to computer-based tests for the PE will be the chemical and the nuclear exam. And that's going to happen starting in 2018. And then 2019, there'll be a series of other exams eventually within about a 5-year period, they'll all get moved over to a computer-based test, and you go to the peer review test center to take them just like you do today. So that's kind of the future. Might be that when you all get ready to take that PE exam, it might be a computer-based test. We're not, depending on how quickly you get ready to take it. Again, you can get all the study specs and that kind of thing. I will say that University of Idaho does offer a PE review course for mechanicals and civils right here in Boise, January through April sometime. If you're interested in that, I think they're going to continue to offer that. Could be a help for you just to kind of brush up on the subjects. So this is the way the exam is now. In mechanical engineering and same in civil, but there's a morning session that's different than the afternoon session. The morning session is about what they call a breadth exam. It covers, all the engineers take kind of the same questions, basically. It's kind of engineering concepts, that kind of thing. In the afternoon section, there is a very focused, specific exam for each of these 3 different types of what we call modules. You have to decide which one you want to take. You've got to decide if you want to take the HVAC or refrigeration exam, or the mechanical and materials, or if you want to take thermal and fluid system. You pick one of those. You don't get to pick all of them. Yes?
So let's say you pick mechanical systems and materials, but then ended up working for, let's say you pick mechanical systems and materials for actual launches, right? And then you end up working for HVAC industry. So does your PE carry some kind of emphasis that you're actually qualified to sign for HVAC?
So here's how it generally works in most states, with some exceptions. Idaho is what we call a non-discipline specific state. So once you get a PE credential, you can practice in any discipline you're competent to practice in. And you decide whether you're competent to practice in that particular discipline. Which means, theoretically, you could be a mechanical engineer and you could practice civil engineering if you're competent to practice civil engineering. You got to decide whether you're competent. And if you're incompetent and you do something and sign and seal some design work because you were incompetent, you could lose your license. So we, and most, I'd say the majority of the states are what we call non-discipline specific states. So if you take any of these type of exams, once you get that PE credential, it's pretty open-ended in terms of where you can practice. Now, California's different. They have they're a discipline-specific state, but I think their only discipline is limited to, say, mechanical engineering. They don't go into the sub-disciplines of mechanical engineering. If you get a mechanical engineering PE, you can't practice civil engineering or any other kind of in California, and a handful of other states are that way. But most states are like Idaho, which is non-discipline specific. Once you get the credential, you have to decide what you're competent to practice in, and only limit your practice to that window of competency that you're capable of doing. So, those are the exams for the PE, and hopefully I think about 2018 we'll get our law changed and be able to start offering it early. Yeah.
Suppose I get a PE license here and I go to California to work. I have to get another PE license. California.
Well, you have to get a separate PE license in every state you're going to practice it, regardless. You could live in Idaho, but your company, many times, companies nowadays are worldwide, right? So you can get a project, live in Idaho and do a project in New York City, for instance, right? But you're going to have to get a New York license in order to do that project in New York City, because the way the Constitution of this country is written is the states get to decide what the licensure requirements are on a statewide basis. There is no such thing as a national license. There never will be. So, yeah, you can practice in another state. Once you get your Idaho credential, if New York or California are discipline specific, you're still going to have to meet whatever requirements that state has. Now, in California, they have a separate exam dealing with seismic issues, earthquakes, right? And when I was up in Alaska, they have a separate what they call Arctic engineering thing. You got to take some courses on it. order to get that credential. They would give me a license in that state, but I had to go do these extra things in order to get the license in the state that Idaho doesn't require because of unique geography or unique events in that state, like earthquakes, that we don't really experience much here. Yes?
So, on a similar question, let's say you're applying for a job in a different state. Like, say you've got a professional engineering license and you want to work for, like, NASA, Johnson Space Center. Would they look at your Idaho credential and say, would they look at it the same way that someone with a local license would?
They would.
Okay.
As far as hiring goes, because these licenses, like I say, it's the same exam all across the country, right? Same PE exam, same FE exam. You don't have to take a different exam if you go to a different state. And so once you're licensed in Idaho, usually what they'll say is you got like 6 months or you got a year to get your license in Texas. And you'll apply to that state by a process they call a license by comity. You used to call it reciprocity. Well, we don't have any reciprocity agreement with any state. They call it comity, which means it's a similar but not exactly the same. So Texas has a different licensure process than we do. You got to meet their requirements. But if you meet the 3, you got your accredited engineering degree, which you have. You pass these 2 exams, which you will. You got your minimum 4 years of experience. You can virtually get licensed in any state. You won't have trouble. You just apply saying, based on my license in Idaho, I'm applying for a Texas license. And it's pretty much a perfunctory process.
And write a check.
You got to write them a check, and you got to pay the renewal fees just like you do in Idaho. But it's going to be, if you don't try to follow some alternate path, some states, for instance, will license engineers with just a technology degree, not an accredited EAC degree. Those people have a tough time getting a license in Idaho because our board doesn't consider technology degrees as substantially equivalent. So depending on those kinds of anomalies, those are where people get hung up trying to get licensed in another state. But you're not going to have that problem because you're graduating from an accredited program. Yes?
Is there an expiration date on PE license?
Well, there's always an expiration date. You're required to renew it every 2 years in Idaho, and most states have two-year renewal. Some have a 1 year, some have a 3 year. But you got to renew it, and you got to meet the renewal requirements, which in almost every state means you got to do what they call continuing professional development. Got to stay current with state of practice. Yes.
So I don't know whether you have a slide on this, but we got an email recently about restricted PE for faculty. I wanted to know more why that is existing now, or what is the procedure to get that, and then what are the restrictions of the restricted PE for faculty?
How much time do I have to go into this? So, yes, we just got a law change in Idaho where we will allow faculty to get a PE license without having to take the PE exam. And the reason for that is there's a state law that says if you're going to teach upper division engineering courses, you have to have a PE. And there's a number of faculty, because there isn't a PE exam in every discipline, believe it or not. There isn't an exam written for material science and materials engineering. There isn't one. No one doesn't exist. The closest exam is metallurgy. And because we have these anomalies, we at the licensure board and the deans of the engineering schools in Idaho decided we were going to pursue an alternate path to licensure that doesn't require an exam. But you have to have a PhD and you have to teach at an Idaho university, and it's only good for teaching. It doesn't allow you to sign and seal design work. It doesn't allow you to consult on the site. It doesn't allow you to do anything other than teach upper division engineering. So it is a restricted license. It gives an alternate pathway for people that need it and want it. And that's how that works. There's an application on our website you can get, fill it out, send it in. But there are some limitations. If you don't have a PhD, don't even bother to apply. You're wasting your time and your money. If you got a PhD and you're teaching, then you're qualified for this particular type of thing. Does that answer the question? Okay, another question?
Yeah, I was curious as to, and I think I've talked to you before actually on this, but what a graduate degree counts as sort of experience for the PE?
So in Idaho and in many states, we give an additional year of experience credit if you have a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, and a master's. So if you want to go on and pursue master's degree, you'll get, instead of having to have 4 years of experience, you'll only need 3 years of experience, because the board will credit you 1 year of experience for your master's credential. Likewise, if you have a PhD, the board will credit you 2 years of experience for your PhD credential. So you only need 2 years of experience. So, and you can't earn work experience concurrent with education. In other words, you can't work part-time, go to school part-time, and count the same number of time period. You can't double count. They don't let you double it. Another, yes?
So if you're doing that and you're getting yearly experience for your graduate degree, do you have to be doing anything, say, mechanical engineering all the time? Like if you went to graduate school for a business degree, would that count with this?
Business degree is not going to count as an experience credit for engineering. Only an engineering degree will count. Business degree won't count. Not that you shouldn't pursue a business degree, but I'm just saying that our board is not going to give that credit to you. Yes?
Does an internship count as credit?
Right now, an internship does not count either. You can't go to school unless you work. The clock for engineering experience doesn't start until you receive your bachelor's of science degree. So if you're working while you're getting your degree, all that work experience you get doesn't count towards your 4-year minimum. Now, unfortunately, that's just the way it works. I wish it didn't work that way, but it works that way. Yes?
Well, I'm an international student, so after I'm done with my school career, I'm going to go back home and do visa and immigration stuff. If I have the FE exam passed and everything, if I work there back home like for 4 years, then I just send my experience there as an engineer, getting the PE, or what's going to be the process, or is it possible to get the PE if I work abroad somewhere in the country?
His question was, what kind of working international experience is going to credit towards getting his PE license? And that's kind of a case-by-case basis. I think our board will look at the experience and examine it, but a lot of it depends on what that experience is. It's more of what the experience is and where you get it. If for instance, if you're a salesperson, you got an engineering degree, but you're working in sales, you get some of these, and they want to get a PE license, and they want to use their sales experience as a basis for getting a PE license. Our board isn't going to give them credit for being a salesperson. You got to be doing real engineering work in order to get credit for that experience. Now, the complication for an international, getting the FE credential while you're here works. Different states have different requirements for your first PE license. In Idaho, they won't let you take the PE exam here in Idaho unless you meet the residency requirement of Idaho. In other words, you got to live here, you got to work here, or you got to be a full-time student here in order to qualify as a resident of Idaho to take the PE exam. Not all states have that. You can probably find a state that doesn't. But if you're living abroad and you want to take the PE exam, typically right now, because it's not a computer-based test, you got to go to the state that offers it, the day they offer it, in the location they offer it, and take it. So if you're living abroad, that's pretty inconvenient. But once they convert it to a computer-based test, and they do offer the exam abroad. They offer it up in Canada, they offer it in Saudi Arabia, and in Egypt, and other locations around the world that those countries have an agreement with the National Council to offer it. So you can take it there, and you get a credential. You won't get a PE credential from Idaho there, but you'll get a PE credential from whatever country you're in there. So that's kind of how that works from an international standpoint. But you can take the FE exam here, and it's virtually, if those countries are using a similar process what the U.S. uses, and I know there's a number of countries that do that, especially in the Middle East, then you should be able to take the FE and PE exam there, or better, take the FE exam here and take the PE exam elsewhere. You all don't know where you're going to live when you get out. You might live in some other state or even some other country. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue your license credential while you're required elsewhere. Yes?
Okay, so let's say that I were to do 2 years in Idaho, and then I were to move and do 2 years
question is if he works 2 years in Idaho, and goes elsewhere and works 2 years in some other state, does that count for 2 years experience or 4 years experience, basically?
Exactly.
So the answer is it should count as 4 years experience. It doesn't matter what state you get your experience in. When you apply for your PE license, in whatever state you're at, they're going to look at your experience. And in many states, some states even require that experience to be validated by an employer or another licensed professional. We don't do that here in Idaho, but many states do that. Like you go to Texas, they're going to have a very rigorous process for how you prove you got bona fide experience. So just be aware that you're going to be scrutinized on your experience before you get your credential, but generally, once you graduate, get that BS degree, in just about every state, the clock starts if you're working for an employer doing bona fide engineering work. Doesn't matter where you're working, as long as it's bona fide engineering work, you're probably going to get the experience that you need. Especially if it's progressive, you know. Like I say, you can't be doing the same job for 4 years, but if you do get other experiences and they give you more complex assignments and they give you more responsibility, then that's how you demonstrate the progressive nature of your experience. Yes?
So, as you're talking about this, experience seems like a very important part of becoming a professional engineer. So is there a way while we're gaining this experience to document it? So as we're applying, it's easy?
Yes, there is a way. NCES offers what they call a record, an NCES record. When you sign up for your FE exam through them, you're going to have to give them all your contact information. And when you graduate, they're going to want your transcripts. And you're going to want to give it to them. Because that means you're not going to have to order a new transcript for every state that's going to want it. Because in order for you to get a license in Idaho, we're going to ask for your transcripts to prove that you graduated. And we're going to want to get it directly from Boise State. We're not going to take your word for it. We're not going to let you mail it in yourself. We've got to get it directly from the institution. And you're going to have to prove that you passed the exams. You're going to have to prove that you got a bona fide experience. So they offer this records program where you can, from the very get-go, from the time you pass that FE exam, you can start building the record with them. You can show the experience, and you can update it as much as you want. And then when you get ready to apply for your license or apply for your exam, many states, if not all states, will accept the NCES record. And you don't have to fill out the experience form, so to speak, unique to that particular state. Now, not all states do that. We're working that way in Idaho, so we will accept the NCES record for the exam as well as for a comedy license. Now, they charge a fee to transmit it. They don't charge you a fee to build it. So you can build it, update it, however much you want. When you get ready to make an application, they'll charge you, I don't know what the fee is, $100 to move it from NCES to the state you're applying. But that's, if you want to keep it online, they also offer that for your continuing professional development. You want to keep an online record in the cloud of what your continuing professional development hours are, if you're going to these seminars and that kind of thing. You can just keep that right there, and that can be automatically transmitted to whatever state requires it, whenever they require it. So that's a national service that's offered through the National Council of Engineers, Examiners for Engineering Service. Yes, another question.
This is another question related to kind of getting work experience while going to school. So if you get any type of certificates while you're, so say, for example, myself, I'm working on my master's degree, I passed the FE exam. I have the opportunity to get a certificate here coming up. Would that certificate also count? So it would be 3 years experience after I graduate with my master's. Would thus different certificates count as knocking some of the experience requirements down as well, or is it just the master's degree?
His question is if he gets another credential, like some certificate, while he's working on his master's degree, does that count towards the experience credit? And the answer to that is no. It doesn't matter what other credential you get from a certificate standpoint. The board's only going to recognize work experience as documented and demonstrated on your application. You could have any kind of certifications you want, but those are nice to have. Maybe your employer would require it of you. Our board isn't going to require it, nor are they going to regard it as a substitute for bona fide experience. Another question?
So I understand the restricted PE now, but what would be the designation? Like, would you have PE and then parentheses restricted? Like,
I don't remember. I don't know. We haven't got that far with the PE restricted license yet. Probably not. I'm thinking that the faculty that want to get a PE restricted license, I don't know that we're going to have any limitations of how you use
Will I
that
get a
title.
stamp? I will get a stamp.
You won't have to get a stamp. You don't want one. I don't know that you need it. You shouldn't use it. You shouldn't be able to use it, really. Yes.
One last question. So I got my undergrad in a foreign country, and I've never taken the FE. So do I have to first take FE and then apply for the restricted PE if I decide to do that?
Well, his question is, he got his Bachelor of Science degree in another country. He's never taken the FE exam. What do we got to do in order to go to the next step to get the PE exam? Okay, here's the thing. If you graduate from a college program and it's not EACA accredited, you're going to have to prove that your undergraduate degree meets a certain standard. And the standard our board uses is what we used to be EACA equivalent, but ABET's done some funny things about no longer having courses listed and that kind of thing. So what we've changed our rule to say is it's got to meet the NCEES Engineering Education Standard. So if you've got a degree from a foreign institution or a non-EACA accredited institution, like a technology degree, or maybe a program for whatever reason isn't accredited, our board's probably going to make you, and in most states are going to do the same thing, they're going to make you go to NCES, pay $400, whatever their charge is, and get your undergraduate credential evaluated for meeting the NCES Engineering Education Standard. And if they find deficiencies, they'll notify you of that, and you might have to make those up, or our board will require that you make those up before they will say you met our education credential. See, an EACA education credential means your education is unconditionally accepted in every state. Anything less than that has to be demonstrated as substantially equivalent. Yes?
Even though you receive your master's and your PhD from US, for example.
In Idaho, we do have a process where you can do what they call a course comparison. The board may not make you go to NCES and get that credential evaluated if you can demonstrate on their course comparison sheet that you've met all the requirements of the NCES education standard. And if you've got a master's and a PhD, on all likelihood, you're going to be able to demonstrate that on their form that's in the application. So you might try that process first. I can't promise you it'll work, but it might work. This question is if you've got a master's or a PhD and you've been with a foreign Bachelor of Science credential, do you still have to go to NCES to get that evaluated? The answer is, like a good attorney would say, it depends. It depends on, whether or not our board will recognize all the courses in the comparison form as substantially. And you can do that yourself. Yes, more questions?
Just a clarification on being licensed in Idaho and when California practice. Do I have to retake the exam?
In most states, once you pass the FE exam and the PE exam, you should never have to take it again. This is why I encourage you all to do this. I get calls at the board office all the time, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, even civil engineers. Hey, I'm out of school 10, 15 years. I worked for an industry that was exempt. I didn't need a license. Or I want to go back and teach at the university. I get this from a lot of you wife with faculty. I worked in industry. I was in semiconductors. Now I got to teach. What do I got to do? You're not going to like the answer. And the answer is go back and take a test and all that stuff you learned in college. 2 tests, in fact. One for the fundamentals and one for the discipline specific. So if you go to California and you keep a license, you pass the test in Idaho, you keep it current and you don't allow it to expire, or you don't get in trouble and get disciplined by the board, you don't have to take that exam in any state you go to. Now, California has a unique exam dealing with seismic and other issues. You're going to have to take their exam, their state-specific exam. But you shouldn't have to take another NCES national exam. Again, if you take it once, pass it, it's good for the rest of your life, as long as you stay in good standing with the license board. If you fail to stay in good standing with the license board, some states will make you retake it. Like if you allow your license to expire. I know Indiana, if your license expires in Indiana, you get to go take the exams again. It's kind of harsh, but that's the way they do it. Yes.
Perhaps this is a question for NCS. You have the answer. So the undergraduate curriculum has become the bare bones course, right? And then oftentimes when you look at the AP exam questions, they ask subject areas that are not covered, say in our terms and they ask questions about the supplementary chart, etc. And oftentimes those are covered in technical courses. So is there any plan to kind of bring the AP exam content questions aligned with the current curriculum offered across the nation?
This question is there any, the curriculum, a lot of times, the FE exam is based on courses that you may not have taken as an undergrad because many of those courses are elective. And my answer is I don't know. I don't know what NCS is going to do. NCS, the way this works is they get thousands of people from all across the country. Most of them are professors and faculty at universities. And they come to Clemson, South Carolina, where the NCS is headquartered at, right on the campus of Clemson University. And they sit in these rooms and they write these exam questions. And there's thousands of them, thousands of people, tens of thousands of exam questions that get written every year. It's updated every year. So as they do those updates, I don't know if they're looking at matching the exam with the questions the way the curriculum is being taught at the university level. I don't know how much variability there is. I'm not smart enough to be a faculty member. Okay? I'm just a Bachelor of Science kind of guy. So, I don't know the answer to that question. But I suspect, I know they've had many debates about licensure and whether you should get a master's degree in order to get your PE license. That isn't going to happen anytime in the future. But I know that they're constantly updating the exams, and I suspect that they're trying to probably do just as you say, because of the faculty that are writing the exams are just aware of the course limitations that you probably are. That's kind of how that works. Any other questions? One more. Can I finish this presentation?
Do you have any feel for what, given the number of licensed professional engineers and land surveyors in Idaho, what percentage get into this?
The percentage is low. Most people get into trouble because they don't do their continued professional development. I know we probably get 40 complaints a year, and of those we probably discipline, 25% of them. And that's out of 9,000 people that have a license in Idaho. So, it's pretty low.
Way less than 1%?
Yeah. All right, let me try to get through this. Am I done at 1 o'clock or something?
Well, we could go longer, but I think several people probably have to leave, so we should try to wrap it up around 1.
All right. Well, we can just leave it right here.
How many more do we have? Just a couple.
There's it's on just one more time.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So
It was one of those moments in your life you'll probably never forget when you find out that you've passed, and it was just a wonderful feeling.
First thing I did when we got off the phone was I opened up my resume, and on the top of my resume where my name was, I added a comma after my last name, a big capital P, a period, a capital E, and a period.
I knew there would be career opportunities beyond just a job out of school, but to be able to advance and learn and grow within that field, which is again why licensure appealed to me, because I wanted to know and to show that I was committed to that career, that I was willing to make the effort to continue to learn and advance within that field, and then be able to make even greater contributions in the future.
There's an immediate, oh wow, this guy knows what he's doing.
It's instant credibility.
And at the end of the day, that means, hey, I'm the one with the job security.
Get your license. It'll absolutely be worth it. You won't regret it.
Okay, so that's it. If you need contact information for NCGS,
All right, let's thank our speakers.